Have you ever felt like a passenger in your own life? Like your thoughts, emotions, and habits were driving the car, while you sat quietly in the back seat, just watching it all happen? That's how Jacob felt. A young man from a small American town. Not lazy, not lost, just overwhelmed. Every day he woke up telling himself, "Today I'll eat better. Today I'll stop scrolling. Today I'll start that dream project." But each night, there he was again, on the couch, glued to his phone, frozen by distractions, swallowed by procrastination, frustrated, empty, stuck. Jacob wasn't weak, he wasn't lacking talent. What he lacked was something we rarely talk about in school or at work: mental discipline. See, your mind is like a wild horse, powerful, fast, full of energy. But if you don't train it, it'll drag you off a cliff. If you guide it, it'll take you to the mountaintop. This is the story of how Jacob went from chaos to clarity, from mindless reactions to mindful choices, from drifting to taking the wheel of his own life. And maybe it's your story too. Because the truth is, without mental discipline, even the most talented person will fail to reach their potential. Discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom. The freedom to choose, to focus, to live with purpose. So if you're tired of starting over, if you're sick of breaking promises to yourself, if you're ready to actually change, stay with me. Because everything you want begins not with motivation, but with mastery over your mind. And that journey begins today. One evening, Jacob was on a walk through a local park when he passed a bronze statue he'd never noticed before. It was of a man standing tall, eyes closed, fists wrapped in cloth. The plaque read, "Jack the Quiet, Storm Merrick, Golden Gloves Champion 1952. He Googled the name when he got home. What he found sparked something deep inside him. Jack Merrick wasn't the most talented boxer of his time. He didn't have the fastest reflexes or the flashiest moves. But his coach used to say, "Jack had the strongest mind I ever saw." Before every fight, Jack would train blindfolded, not for shows but to master his awareness, to learn how to feel the rhythm of his opponent, to sharpen his other senses, to trust himself without needing to see. In an old interview, Jack explained, "In the ring, the lights, the crowd, the noise, they mess with your head. But when you train blind, you learn to silence everything except what matters. You learn to own your space." That phrase stuck with Jacob, own your space. He realized that mental discipline wasn't about building walls to block out the world. It was about creating internal space strong enough to stand in the middle of chaos without crumbling. Inspired, Jacob started a new practice. Each morning for 5 minutes he sat in silence. No music, no phone, just him and his breath. It wasn't meditation with fancy techniques. It was presence. At first his thoughts ran wild, reminders, regrets, random ideas. But he stayed with it. He learned to let the noise pass, like clouds drifting across a sky. Soon those 5 minutes became his anchor, a sacred space, a mini boxing ring where he met his own mind every morning, not to fight it, but to train it. He started to journal more deeply. He wrote about the Jack Merrick rule, the idea that mastering your internal world is the only way to thrive in the external one. When life gets loud, your mind doesn't have to. He even found old footage of Jack's training, the quiet way he moved, the calm in his posture. Jack didn't just win fights, he radiated control. That's what Jacob wanted. And he realized he didn't need to be in a boxing ring to train for that. Because life is the ring. Every day you're up against distraction, temptation, fear, laziness. And if you don't practice, those things will knock you out before the first bell. Jacob began treating his day like a championship round. His morning ritual was his warm-up. His focus sessions were his sparring. His discipline wasn't rigid. It was strategic. He stopped waiting for motivation. He built systems. He tracked his time. He gave himself time-outs when he noticed his attention slipping. He had a mantra: be like Jack. And little by little, he did. Jacob still had bad days. He still got distracted. But now he recovered faster. He didn't spiral, because he had trained his comeback, and in that journey, he understood a deeper truth. Mental discipline isn't about controlling the world. It's about not letting the world control you. And just like Jack in the Ring, Jacob was learning to stand tall, even when he couldn't see everything, because he had trained for the fight no one else could see. Weeks passed, then months, and slowly Jacob began to feel a shift, not just in his schedule but in his identity. The man who used to reach for his phone first thing in the morning now reached for his breath. The man who used to avoid silence now welcomed it. The man who used to flinch at discomfort now leaned into it, not because it felt good, but because he finally understood that discipline isn't pain. It's power. He wasn't chasing motivation anymore. He was creating momentum. His mornings were sharper, his decisions more deliberate. He no longer defaulted to distraction when things got hard. He paused, he breathed, he responded. And that pause, that space between stimulus and response, became the birthplace of his freedom. One afternoon, a friend noticed the change. "You're different, man, like solid. What's your secret?" Jacob just smiled. He didn't want to preach. He didn't need to, because true transformation doesn't speak, it radiates. He shared a simple truth. "I stopped letting my mind run me. Now I lead it." He wasn't perfect. He still stumbled. He still felt fear, doubt, frustration. But now he had tools, habits, anchors, systems that brought him back. He had built what he once envied in others, consistency. Jacob also began to notice a ripple effect. His calm influenced others. His discipline inspired quiet conversations. His ability to say no to screens, to drama, to chaos, reminded people that they could say no too. He understood something most people miss. When you discipline your mind, you don't just change your life. You change the energy you bring to every room. And that shift, it's contagious. Co-workers began asking about his routine. His younger cousin started journaling. His mother picked up an old book again. Jacob wasn't leading by force. He was leading by alignment. He no longer felt like a victim of his circumstances, because the man he became on the inside was stronger than anything he faced on the outside. One night, reflecting in his journal, he wrote, "Discipline gave me back my voice, my time, my soul." That was it. That was the transformation. Not louder, not faster, just clearer. He had redefined success. It wasn't about being busy. It was about being intentional. And it all began with small, repeated acts of self-leadership. So if you're listening right now and wondering if this could be your story too, the answer is yes. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours to write. And every day you show up for yourself, every moment you resist the easy path and choose the right one, you're becoming someone powerful, someone who doesn't wait to feel ready, someone who chooses to become ready. Discipline is not something you find, it's something you build. Jacob stood on a quiet overlook near his favorite trail, watching the sun melt into the horizon. It was the same trail he used to avoid when he felt lost, too steep, too long. Now it was his reset, his reminder, his proof. He closed his eyes and breathed in the cool air. There was no noise, no pressure, just presence. His journey hadn't been perfect. There were days when he slipped, when the old patterns called him back. But the difference now was he didn't answer, because discipline had taught him something no shortcut ever could. You don't need to control everything, only yourself. That's the freedom, that's the fire, that's the foundation of a life on purpose. So now it's your turn. Maybe you're where Jacob was, tired of your own excuses, sick of watching days blur by, feeling like you're stuck on repeat, and deep down knowing you're meant for more, not just more success, more clarity, more presence, more power. And that begins not with a giant leap, but with a single, intentional act. Here's your challenge. Tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 things you will do tomorrow. Things that align with the person you want to become. Not massive goals, just deliberate choices. Wake up with your alarm. Drink water before. Caffeine, sit in silence for 5 minutes, then do the first one, that's all. One promise to yourself. Kept. Because every promise you keep becomes a brick in the foundation of the life you want. And if you fail tomorrow, that's okay. Try again the next day, and the next. Because this isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Remember, discipline is the bridge between your potential and your power. You've heard Jacob's story, but the next story, and the one that matters most, is yours, so start writing it. Start today. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their strength. Drop a comment. What habit are you ready to reclaim? What's one action you'll take today that your future self will thank you for? Take back the wheel, lead your mind, design your life. Because you're not here to drift, you're here to drive.